water bottle.
Oh, of course it's
I got
Tyler.
excited and thought it was cowbell.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, that's fine. I was starting not to fear the Reaper. The Reaper. Did I say Weeper? I feel like I'm weeping because of all this sweat.
It's okay.
Eyes are burning. I got up this morning. I was like, I'm not putting my contacts in. I'm not messing with that. Stupid glasses, I swear. Or stupid eyes. I don't know what is. But usually I have a couple of minutes just to
Calm down.
dry out. But all right, we'll go ahead and get started. All right, we're working our way through. We're going to be in chapter 5, and we're going to start where we left off last week, verse 21. But before we hop into the text, I want us just to think a little bit about the world that we're living in. You know, I've heard people say that it's more divided than it ever has been and all this stuff, but really in the history of humanity, I don't really think that's true. Not to say we're not divided at all. We obviously are. But I think in every period of time, no matter what decade, century, even year that we're living in, we can not discuss, but describe the world in which we live as one full of rage, division, conflict. None of this stuff is new. And what's interesting about this section of the Sermon on the Mount is that Jesus actually calls us as his disciples in a very fundamentally different way, to where we're prioritizing, or we're supposed to be prioritizing, reconciliation, even when the world seems to be on fire. And let's face it, Billy Joel said it best. We didn't start the fire, but it was always burning since the world's been turning. The fire in the Sermon on the Mount is a metaphor, obviously, but let's think about our anger as fire. You know, we think about how a fire starts. How does a fire start?
Speed.
With what?
Hot tap heat.
Oh, I thought you said speed. I'm like,
Well, good
It
research.
only takes a force.
calm down, Alan. No, it starts as a spark, right?
Yeah.
A little spark. You know, what was it that started the wildfires a couple of years ago out in California? It was a baby reveal party where they lit off something. And it started off small. Always small. And that spark catches onto the right material and it begins to flame a little bit. And that flame starts to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's the same way with our anger, right? If something offends us, rubs us the wrong way, there's a spark. And what do? Our tendency is to kind of nurture the spark. We think about it. We obsess over it. And maybe we're replaying the offense over and over and over again. I know I'm constantly doing that with Tyler. Over and over and over again. Just replaying the offense. And what does that do to the little bitty flame now? It makes it bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden, it's not just an offense. Now our anger that we have at this offense is turning into a rage. And it spreads throughout the body. The tongue catches on fire. Next thing you know, we say something we didn't mean to say, or maybe we say something we meant, but we say it in a way that we didn't mean, right? And now all of a sudden, you know what we've done? We've taken that fire inside us, and now it's spread to someone else. And now they're on fire. And the cycle just repeats. And it repeats and it repeats and it repeats. And so then the fire is now raging all around us. And that's what we see in the world. That's what we see in the world. Turn on the news. What are the news stories about? Chaos, right? Chaos. And this side did something to this side. And this side did something to this side. No one's innocent. It's absolute chaos. Traffic. Whoa. That steps on my toes. I hate traffic. Oh, man. I think I talk more to other drivers in my own family. Even in the car by myself. We get in fights with our neighbors, family conflicts, tension at our workplace. Oh, online. Oh, don't you love being online on social media? Chris is shaking his head no. I know he does. He loves it. I see him on TikTok all the time. And you need to be a little bit more modest on there, I'm just saying. I'm just teasing. This is nothing new, guys. In fact, quoting Billy Joel again, it's always burning since the world's been turning. You can go all the way back to Genesis 4 and we see it, right? Here's Cain and Abel. Here's two brothers. God accepts one sacrifice, doesn't accept Cain's. What does that do to Cain? There's a spark, and he nurtures it. In fact, God even warns him, right? He says, sin's crouching at the door. In other words, it desires to have you. You need to rule over it. In other words, get control over yourself, Cain. Did Cain get control over it? Absolutely not. And you know what? I can understand that. Because when I get offended, my tendency, maybe like yours, I get in the car, I'm going home, and I'm replaying that incident. And I can just picture Cain replaying that incident. Stupid sheep. Get some mint jelly and kill them all. You know, I mean, whatever it is. And he's replaying that incident to the point, what does he do? He kills his brother. I find it interesting the Old Testament doesn't tell us how. You know where we learn how? It's not from coloring books. Coloring books in our Bible class books for the kids. He takes that big old rock and slams it over his head. Truth is, Genesis doesn't tell us how. John tells us how. In 1 John chapter 3, when he's talking about anger and how anger is so dangerous in the heart that it can lead to murder, and he uses Cain as an example, the King James has a better translation, and I don't say that lightly. He uses the word slaughtered. The ESV, these modern day translations, they think we're a bunch of snowflakes because they don't want to use kind of violent words. They'll say murder. The Greek word is a word specifically used for butchering animals to sacrifice. That's the only time it's used in the New Testament. And that is the usage of the word. Cain basically said to his brother, or to God, you want a sacrifice? Here's your sacrifice. And he slaughtered, sacrificed, butchered his brother for a sacrifice. That's what anger can lead to. Anger consumed him to the point that he didn't just commit murder, he committed an act that we would find absolutely horrendous. And that pattern's been happening from the beginning. Anger grows into rage, rage grows into violence, and the fire continues to burn. Now, bringing it back up, getting to the point, first century context, guess what? Jesus' world was on fire. No different. You had the Jews versus the Samaritans. You had the Jews versus the Romans. You had Jews versus Greek culture. Conflict. Within the Jewish culture, Pharisees versus Sadducees. The Zealots hated everybody, especially hated those tax collectors. Some loved Rome. Some loved those who loved Rome. Some wanted to kill anyone who loved Rome. The world was on fire. So much so that even Jesus knew that within their lifetime, you look at Matthew 24. Matthew 24 is describing the ultimate culmination of all that hatred and all that anger, because he's describing Jerusalem burning in 70 AD. He knew that was happening. They're tearing themselves apart, and the fire is ultimately going to consume them. Now, we can also look at our world. And you know what? It hasn't gotten much better. In fact, it's about the same, isn't it? we pit ourselves against each other constantly. But Jesus calls us to a higher calling. He calls us as his people, his disciples, to be different. But he does so, he never calls his people, back in the day, he never called them to come up and defend Jerusalem. He doesn't say that. He doesn't also go to the opposite end and say, come on, let's hurry up and get Jerusalem out of the way. Let's hurry up this fall. When you look at how he treats his own disciples, one of which was a zealot, one of which was a tax collector. I never see him taking sides, do you? He never does. And yet he sits them both at the same table. But at the same time, Jesus never ignores the tension that's there. But what he does do is that he calls his people, by extension us, to be peacemakers. In other words, don't fan the flame. The world fans the flame. We need to start putting the flames out. And so we've been talking with this idea of making our homes little embassies of God's kingdom here on earth. In other words, our homes, we want to be determined to do what God says to do, to be obedient to God, to live our life as his disciples here on earth, where we are exiled momentarily to do his will on earth as it is in heaven, even if it's only within our households. Because, and again, let's face it, I don't think there's anyone here who doesn't wish that we would have the ability and the influence to go out and fix all of the world's problems, to go out and just stop all of the anger and the wrath and the violence and all the strife that's happening, to just stop all of the destruction because of that. But we know we're not able to do that. I'm not able to do that. You're not able to do that. But what we can do, I don't have control over everybody else, but we can have control over ourselves and our household, of what goes on within our homes. And we have to have that Joshua mindset that says, as for me and my house, we are going to serve the Lord. That's what our commitment has to be. That our homes are going to be these little embassies of God's kingdom. And in this embassy, we're going to practice peacemaking. We're going to practice speaking out against evil. And we're going to make a practice of never answering that evil with more evil. And we're never going to answer anger with more anger. And we're not going to answer fire with more fire. In fact, Paul himself would say in Romans 12 and verse 21 that we are to overcome evil with what? Good. And so let's see what Jesus says here. It's Matthew chapter 5, we're going to begin in verse 21. And if someone would, go ahead and read verses 21 through 22.
You have heard that it was said to those of old, you shall not murder, and whoever murders will be in danger of the judgment. But I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whoever says to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whoever says, you fool, shall be in danger of hellfire.
Okay. Jesus starts off this subject by talking about when peace breaks. What happens? What happens when peace breaks? Now, the Pharisees, at what point does peace break? Because the Pharisees would go off and say, well, peace breaks when violence happens. Okay? So Alan and I have a riff of some kind. You know what he's like, Darlene. You understand. So Alan and I have a riff. Right? and so I'm angry at him. He's angry at me. Pharisees would say, well, that's fine. That's normal. You know, just don't. All of a sudden, we get into it. And he punches me. Notice, I'm the innocent one. He punches me.
And you don't get up.
And okay. Touche. And so the Pharisees would say, at that point, violence has started. That's the point of conflict. But notice what Jesus says. Jesus, again, in this countercultural way of teaching, this countercultural way of thinking, he says that peace doesn't break when violence happens. Peace actually breaks long before that. In fact, he says when anger starts building up in your heart, peace is already broken. When insults start to fly, peace is already broken. When you call someone a fool, peace is broken. And so when that contempt as a spark lands in your heart and you start nurturing it, peace is broken. And so here's this kind of a progression that leads to violence, and it starts with that spark of anger. And all of a sudden, Jesus says it leads to insults. Because as a man thinks in his heart, what? So is he. And so we're insulting now, and you know what? Words hurt, and so guess what that happens? All of a sudden, I'm starting to feel contempt. Because now it's being verbalized. So here's this contempt, and that contempt, when we nurture that contempt, it grows up to be hatred. And that hatred ultimately leads to violence. And you take that all the way to the extreme, and what does it end up as? Murder. Murder. And here's Jesus' point. Stop the fire when it's a spark. Don't try to stop it after the fire is already burning. One thing I love about Bible study, I love it when words are repeated. Brad, I don't know if you've ever noticed this about your writing. I'll go back and edit my writing, and I am the most repetitive, redundant person ever to walk the face of this earth. That's a bold comment. But I will notice I use this word 15 times in one paragraph. What was I thinking? When the Bible does it, it's actually a good thing. A point's being made, and that means we need to stop and start to think about this. And there's 3 words that he uses over and over again in that last verse. It's the word libel. Libel, libel, libel. It's a Greek word that means guilty or responsible for. And so, who's liable in all of this situation? Who's responsible for it? The murderer? Absolutely, right? He's responsible. But what about the one who's angry? He's responsible too, according to Jesus. The one who throws out the first insult and insults back, they're guilty as well. They're liable as well. The one who ultimately shouts out, "You fool," well, he's guilty too. We have a tendency to always point to the other side and say, they're the ones. They're the ones, they're the ones, and they're over there shouting, pointing at us, they're the ones, they're the ones, they're the ones. Jesus says you're both the problem. All of you are the problem. And that makes this truth extremely uncomfortable, because who does that leave who's innocent? Who's innocent in that? I'm not. Travis just looks guilty sitting there. I'm well acquainted with Tyler. He has bodies in his backyard y'all don't even know. Oh, sorry. Make John Wayne Gacy blush. No, I'm kidding. Bad joke. Okay. Where was I? None of us are innocent. And that's Jesus' point here. I mean, is there anyone here who's never felt anger at someone else? Is there anyone here who's never said things just spur of the moment? You're not even thinking, and before you know it, it's out. I mean, we've all engaged in name calling. We've all done that. We've all harbored that kind of bitterness. We are all guilty. That means every single one of us has fanned the flames. And that means every single one of us has a need for forgiveness. Every single one of us. But we've got to be humble enough to say, I'm guilty. I've participated in this, I've fanned the flames. I need forgiveness. And Jesus is begging, stop fanning the flames. Stop fanning the flames of anger and outrage and that loathing. Stop letting those words come out of your mouth, because every time we speak out in anger, when we're outraged, it spreads the fire every single time, without exception. All right. But he has something practical to say about this. Someone read verses 23 and 24.
Therefore, if you are present, presenting your offering at the altar, and remember that your brother has something against you. Leave your offering there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother, and then come and present your offering.
Okay. This is amazing. Jesus addresses both sides of the conflict. If you notice that, I hear people erroneously say, I'm not going to them. They did it to me. They're supposed to come to me. Or I offended them. I'm not going over there. They're supposed to come to me if they're offended. It's not my problem. That's not what this says. Jesus is addressing both sides of he's saying there's one coin, and you're either on one side or the other of it. You're either heads or tails, right? And so this first section of verses, you're angry at other people. Now it's someone who has something against you. Both directions need reconciliation. When someone is angry at you, you go and try to find reconciliation, make peace with them. When you're angry at someone else, go try to make peace with them. The point is this: we are, as peacemakers, to take the initiative. And we have to, if we're going to be called disciples, we have to prioritize reconciliation. In fact, this is a stunning example that he uses here in these verses. So here you are, first century Jew, and you're coming to the temple. You got your gift, sacrifice in hand. You're going to hand it over to the priest. They're going to make the sacrifice for you. And then you remember, you know what, so-and-so, they're holding something against me. You know what? Jesus says, leave it. Leave it at the altar. Go. Fix the problem. Now, you're hearing this as a first century Jew who has been told over and over and over again, the priority is sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. How do you think you're going to look at this? This goes against everything they're being taught by the religious leaders. Everything. And so he's saying, you stop your worship. You leave immediately. You go to that individual, and before you do anything else, before you complete your worship, before you do anything else upward, vertically, you go to that person and find reconciliation, and you make peace. You take care of the horizontal before the vertical. Can you imagine? Pharisees' minds, and they've been pushing it into the people, these rabbis of the day. Worship. Worship. Nothing's more important than worship. Jesus says there is one thing. Reconciliation. Reconciliation. Hosea 6:6. I desire what? Oh, I just asked you to quote the Old Testament. Don't stone me. I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Not sacrifice. God is more interested in our relationships than our rituals. And I dare say that probably steps on some of our toes as well. Our homes, we have to make a priority the relationships we have with each other, the relationships we have with those on the outside. We have to make a priority about peacemaking and reconciliation and unity. And that means we have to have hard conversations. It's not easy. None of this is easy. As we go through these chapters, none of it's easy. but it's necessary. And so that means we have to talk to each other. We're good at that point. You know what we're not good at?
Hard conversation.
Right.
Listening to the one who's talking. When we sit down to have those hard conversations, you know how majority of us, it's kind of bold, majority of us go in to put them in their place, show them what's what. Is that reconciliation? Is that peacemaking? No, that's humiliating, right? We're to go and we're to listen. We go to them, we want to talk it out. Listen to their perspective. You know, they may be frustrated about something. It may be something small they didn't even realize, and you know what, their boss got onto them, and so they came home and gave the spouse what for, and then the spouse turns to the kids, and then the kids are going out and they're stealing lunch money because now they're bullies. It rolls downhill, right? Listen to their frustration. Listen to their fears, their anger. And one of the most important questions we never need to lose and always be asking, especially when it's regarding our relationships with other people. Why? Why? Never stop asking why. And be curious enough to listen to their reason why. And so if we're angry with someone, hey, if someone has accused us of something, they're angry at us, we go to them and we talk it out and we listen. If we're angry with someone else, guess what we do? Same thing. We go to them, share our feelings, explain our hurt, listen to their side. And again, both occasions we're seeking reconciliation. It's not about being right. It's not about proving ourselves right. It's about making peace. Someone read verses 25 and 26.
Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you to court. Do it while you are still together on the way, or your adversary may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison.
Okay, this is weird. But Jesus isn't changing subjects, right? He's still on point. But he's using this example. And the point of this example of this court situation is that conflict escalates. Always. And the reason conflict escalates is because that's its very nature. The nature of conflict is to escalate. And so here we go, right? Someone says something to you, and your anger, that's that spark. And you're thinking about it. Your anger rises, and so what's our tendency? Say something back, right? So now they've said something, we've said something back, and we don't want it to equate to what they said. We want it to be more than what they said, because now we're in a contest. And so we say something back, and guess what? Their anger rises. So what are they going to do? They're going to respond in kind, right? And now it's going to be more so. And so here's the first person, their anger is going up, back and forth, back and forth. Guess what's happening to the fire? Yeah, it's no longer a spark. It's no longer a spark. And ultimately, if we just let a fire go, what happens? It spreads, it becomes raging, and it can be to the point you can't put it out. I mean, again, poor California. With all the forest fires in California a while back. I mean, and so much you hear, and I don't know if it's gossip or rumor about how some of these things started, but it seems like it started out as just pure stupidity. Something so small. And now this huge portion of the state is raging. And was that easy for them to put out? No. And it affected the entire population almost. We have to get our fires under control before everything relationship-wise becomes broken. Because when it's a small spark, spark happens. It's easy to kind of deal with. Or I'm cooking, and that pan catches on fire. Ironically, it happens more often than you would think. I've got to put it out quickly.
Watching too many movies.
It is, man. Yeah. Can you guess what movie I was thinking of?
Marvel something probably.
Yeva's going to be proud of me that I didn't. No. Yeva's going to be proud of me that I did not mention it from the pulpit. I mentioned it in Bible class. Sorry. Die Hard.
Okay.
When you think of movie villains, Alan Rickman in Die Hard, man, he is. I mean, Bruce Willis is kind of cool, but he has nothing on Alan Rickman. Hans Gruber, dude. Sorry. Tyler and I are talking about movies now. Just go on with your stuff. No, I'm just kidding.
Good movie.
It is the holiday season. It's okay to
It is.
It's okay to talk about Christmas
That's
movies.
absolutely right. The small spark is manageable. If I ignore the fire in the pan on the stove and I don't put it out quickly, it's probably going to spread to the drywall. Curtains, maybe. Next thing you know, the room's on fire. What's easier to put out, throwing a dish rag or a cover on a pan, or putting out a fire in the kitchen when the walls are on fire? The sooner we put it out, the better off everybody is, right? We have to come to terms quickly. And this is why Jesus presents this with such urgency. Because when it escalates, it can escalate to the point where it's just absolutely too late. And the relationship is just completely severed permanently. There's no fixing it anymore because it's gone too far. Okay. A lot of exegesis here. Questions or comments on this section?
I thought you were going to bring up Star Wars.
Oh, man. I'm starting to be offended. After class, both of you. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Okay. Well, let's see how it looks like in action. How do we put this in action? Because, we can stand up here all day and we can exegete the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation, and we can gain all this knowledge and information, and that's wonderful, and all of a sudden we've got these big brains are going around. But unless we transform our hearts, our lives, it's kind of useless, right? So we've got to find the application in this. Application almost always requires hard questions. And I think that's why, especially when it comes to biblical topics, we kind of shy away from application sometimes. Because I love how James gives us that metaphor of the Bible being a mirror, and I'm looking into a mirror. The Bible forces us to look at the very inner parts of ourselves. And so, what does this look like? We have to answer the question, how does my family deal with strife? When conflicts arise, what do? What am I showing them as an example as a parent, grandparent? What am I teaching them to do between siblings, cousins, schoolmates, whatever happens? Because ultimately, when we look at this and how Jesus presents it, there's only two possibilities to handle it. We're either going to be fanning the flames and we're going to be following our nurture, and that means we're on instinct now. We're nurturing our anger, and we're speaking harshly, and we're escalating the conflict. We're just trying to win. Or are we going to be flame extinguishers, where we address it quickly, and we seek reconciliation, and we're trying to make peace? What pattern am I following in my life? What pattern characterizes my home life? Because, honestly, there is nothing more natural than getting hurt and becoming angry. Even when we hurt ourselves, we get angry, right? We stub our toe in the middle of the night. We get angry. It's natural. But Jesus calls us not to be natural people, not to be fleshly people, not to follow our own desires and tendencies, but instead to be spiritual people. That's Galatians 5:16, right? Walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. You see, when anger sparks and when these conflicts arise, our natural response is to fan the flames. The spiritual response is to do everything we can to put them out. And so, how can we apply that? I mean, it starts with us, right? We've got to model the behavior of putting out the flames as soon as they start. When that spark hits, we're on it. We're not waiting for a later time. When it comes to our children, we want them to see us handle the arguments and the tension. They need to see that. You know, if we're not allowing them, when appropriate, to see how we as their parents deal with conflict, how are they going to learn how? Who's going to teach them? Their peers. Their peers are. And what are they going to be teaching them? Anger and duke it out, man. We've got to understand that we have to model this behavior, first of all, at home. Give them that example. We have to model it when we're dealing with each other, with extended family, neighbors, within the church community, in society. Because there's this ripple effect in regard to behavior that when we make that small little change, it ripples out and affects everybody. If we make the decision, and I hear Wayne, he ended early. Okay. Hey, stop it. Okay. When we make the one little change for the better, that has a ripple effect. And when I start with me, it will affect my spouse. It will affect my children. It will affect the neighborhood. And you know, we all want to hold hands and sing Kumbaya and make the world a better place. Guess where that starts? It starts in the middle of that ripple effect. Because when I make that change, not only does it affect the family, it affects society. We argue and argue and argue, and we expect our political parties and leaders and all of this junk to fix the problems of the world. You know how we do it? One individual, me. And what happens when all of the me's in the world start making the change? That's when the world changes. Okay, last minute questions or comments? Okay.